But
it's always okay to punch a Nazi in the face.
It's always okay to punch a Nazi.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the key things is just we have to get comfortable breaking the law. And I think like if that's not something you're used to, that's hard to start with. And so I think start with like just some little acts of civil disobedience, you know?
Putting up stickers. Yeah, putting up stickers is a misdemeanor, but it's a little nice little practice. Hello and welcome. We're talking crime, criminals, and outsiders and how nefarious lawbreakers actually have positive impacts on society, especially when they're sabotaging authoritarian regimes. I'm Carly Heath. And on the show this week, I'm joined by Molly, aka Smurf Smoo, who is a fan of Our Flag Means Death and also history and has some things to say about how outsiders and even criminals can be primed to help out in times where the government fails because of fascism or political unrest. And Tessa is also back on the show as well.
Hello!
Molly, what is the most gay pirate thing to happen to you this week, recently?
I was hanging out with my 3-year-old nephew, and he has this new toy. It's called a blaster corn, which is a gun, but I don't want to be a bummer. It's a little toy gun that is shaped like a unicorn.
Nice.
And
a wholesome gun.
It's a very wholesome gun. And, in these times, you never know.
A gun for the gays. It's
for the
time
gays.
we arm the gays with unicorn guns.
Absolutely. And so I was like, and it has clearly it has like a rainbow mane, and he was pointing out all the colors, individual colors. He's like red, yellow, pink, teal. So instead of, if I was 3, I'd be like blue, but he is very exacting about his color, and he's very into teal. He is a blonde, he's a blonde monster. He's delightful. He's hella steed coated.
Yeah, design aesthetic.
Yeah. So that was my most queer pirate moment of the week.
Beautiful. Tessa, what's the most gay pirate thing that's happened to you recently?
Okay. So this is both a story and a call.
Oh, can I quickly interrupt? Can Dahlia share a gay pirate story too? Just think of the
absolutely.
Okay,
I can even share one that ties into Tessa's gay pirate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then I will introduce someone else is on the show. It's Dahlia. I know nothing about you. You're just like in the room. Tessa, introduce Dahlia.
This is Dahlia. She is one of my very best friends. She is one of my favorite lawbreakers.
Yes.
One of my favorite ass kickers. She is one of my favorite people in the world. We don't deserve her. She's amazing and perfect. And this is Dahlia.
Wow.
Hi, Dahlia.
Okay. Now, Tessa, tell us the most gay pirate thing that's happened to you recently.
Okay, so last night, Dahlia works at a strip club, and so last night, another friend of ours, and I went out to see her set and to like hang out at the strip club for a bit. And the thing is, so the tipping culture is very bad in Montreal in general, like especially in spaces like strip clubs. So like nobody is fucking tipping the dancers on the stage. So me and my friend, obviously, we went and we got like a whole bunch of fives. Because in Canada, you don't have $1 bills. You like $5 is the lowest denomination.
Wait, I thought you had like loonies. Do you got
we do, but like you can't really tip a stripper with a loonie. Like you don't want to throw a coin at strippers.
You can try, but we don't want it.
They don't want it. But like in terms of like bills, which is like the better option, it's you've got 5. So we went and we got a bunch of 5s, and we went into this club and we had the best time of life. I swear to God.
Nice.
Like we sat like right on the stage, and we were just like tipping all of the dancers. And this means that like multiple times I was pulled up onto the stage to have like, okay, just imagine every variety of beautiful, incredible, like brilliant, kind woman, like just completely naked, putting her tits in my face and going, ba, 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 ba. The greatest time of my life. But the frustrating thing is that like we were the only ones tipping, and like almost the entire rest of like we were having so much fun. We were like laughing and talking and like all of the girls were like coming over to the corner of the stage where we were, and the rest of the people in the room were like the most miserable men you have ever seen. Like the definition, if you need a picture for the definition of the word scrub, you just that's them. That's them. These miserable fuckers with all of this unbelievable pulchritude spread out in front of them, sitting there with just like literally pouting. Like them on their fucking phones, not tipping. The girls going up to them being like, hey, do you want a private dance? Because that's how they make their money, because nobody's fucking tipping for the stage dances. And then being like, oh, I don't have any money. Why are you here?
Yeah.
Go away. Get out.
What is wrong? I don't mean to like, be a gender dick, but like, what is wrong with men?
What is wrong with
men?
Why are they upset?
This is the great thing, because like, so we were just like giving people money, and our other friend, she kept like shaming them. She kept being like, what? None of you have jobs? Why are you here? Do you not like women? What is this? But still, nothing. No money. Idiots. But so my call to action, queer people, get out a bunch of cash, go to your local strip club. You're going to have an amazing time.
This is great advice. Great advice.
Yes, it's so good.
More queer people in the strip club. I guess we could lead into my gay pirate story.
Please.
Which is that Tessa and Ashley were such a hit. I don't think they realized how appreciated they were by everybody, because we're used to not getting any money on stage, and you have to get completely naked up there, and people are sitting up close, leering at your holes. And for what? So, I'll be pretty demure if nobody's tipping, but these two were raining chives on me, which was great. And everyone was leaving the stage with a smile on their face just because of these two people who were tipping. And it stirred a bit of a conversation in the locker room about how they were literally just the one element boosting everyone's morale, because so far it had been a terrible night for everybody. And then it sort of came up like, we need more queer people in the strip club. And I found out in that conversation that even more of the dancers are queer than I thought, which was already a really high portion. Most of us just hate men or actively don't engage with them or don't take them seriously. And I think honestly it makes it up a bit easier. But we are taking over the strip club, so we're hoping that the customers can maybe be deluded by more fun queer people who want to see a good show. It honestly is worth the money. I think even if you have like $30, like, you can have a good time in Montreal, and you can't get that anywhere else at a strip club. So please come see us. We're nice people, and
they're so lovely. They're so lovely. So
do you want to share the name of it, or is that?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I work at Cafe Cleopatra, which is probably the oldest.
Yeah,
and we have shamefully low prices for dances. So if you want to come and get some dances, maybe it's a tip as well. It's honestly not going to break the bank, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and everybody can have a good time, and you can just be respectful and not a dick. And
you're allowed to touch us in Quebec, hey? In most places, you're not allowed to touch the strippers, but you can literally grab an ass for $10. I mean,
goddamn, I would love to do that.
Come grab an ass. Come respectfully grab an ass.
And say the name of the strip club one more time.
Cafe Cleopatra. Or
Kathy.
Cleopatra.
So is that Kathy Cleopatra?
No, Cafe.
Oh, Cafe. Okay. Cafe Cleopatra. I didn't hear it. Awesome. And we're going to turn it into the gayest strip club ever.
Yeah, yes.
Like just
the upstairs is already a queer cabaret. We just have to gay up the downstairs.
That's what she said. Sorry, that was. There's got to be a better pun. There's got to be a better.
Perfect. That was perfect.
So my gay pirate story is my coworker is a falconer, and she actually has a red-tailed hawk that now lives in the same barn where I keep my sheep. And she's just training the red-tailed hawk. She takes it on walks, and the neighborhood crows are extremely pissed off about this, and they have all swarm from afar. And every time she goes on walks, she's like this spiral of crows is like a storm, a hurricane of crows above her head, cawing and crack. I even looked up, and there was a crow with a stick in its teeth, like they were arming themselves. They're so pissed off about this red-tailed hawk that has been allowed to come into their neighborhood. They don't know that he's on a leash and he can't cause any trouble. But I've been now made aware of this interbird gang war, turf war that happens now when
I love that. That's
Team
like
Crow.
it's like gothic buttons. basically.
Yeah. Like I imagine Buttons meeting a falconer, like a chick that's a falconer. Like she has a red-tailed hawk, and Buttons being like, "Oh mercy, oh heavens."
That's the most spot on Scottish accent I've ever heard.
That was pretty good.
No, it wasn't. But I appreciate the encouragement, and
I believe in you.
And
I would never try it because I would be freaking awful at it. So I like to try. I think it's a hard accent, and it's also like I was listening to the last episode that you guys did where you're talking about being able to fight fascism, and somebody made a really good point about being willing to make a giant ass out of yourself and being able to stand out and not give a fuck what people think. And so you go fucking keep doing those accents. Keep doing it. I will celebrate it. I will support you. I will give you shit about it, but I will totally be on board.
Before we dive into what we're talking about today, a quick podcast update. Our next Gay Pirate News Hour will be live on YouTube December 7th at 1 p.m. LA time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. I think that's 8 p.m. UK time. Tell me I'm wrong. So be sure to be subscribed to the Our Flag Means Fanfiction YouTube channel so that you can get updates whenever we go live. And also on Friday, we'll be dropping a new episode of the Haunted Hollywood Hour podcast, which is a new podcast from those of us who bring you Our Flag Means Fanfiction. Every week, you get creepy, cool stories set in Hollywood, and subscribe to Haunted Hollywood Hour wherever you get your podcasts. And let's get into talking about it.
One quick thing.
Oh, yes. Interrupt.
4 p.m. Eastern is 9 p.m., I think. Yes.
UK time.
UK time.
Thank you.
Dahlia, no.
Thank you for doing that. Excellent. And we're still trying to figure out who's going to do Gay Pirate News Hour this time around. So Tessa, are you free?
December 7th, I am technically at the Ohio Comic Con.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Molly, are you free? Do you want to do Gay Pirate News Hour on Saturday? It's December 7th. December 7th.
I probably am. Yeah. I'd love to. Yes. Yeah. Why not?
Cool.
Of course.
Yay! Excellent. So let's get into talking about misfits, miscreants, and ne'er-do-wells, and all the good they actually do in the world. So Molly, first, what got you interested in this topic?
Well, I've just been one of those people who's always been interested in trying to figure out how every time I've ever heard anything about, Nazi Germany, the Holocaust and all of that, I was just always fascinated with the idea that Germans, there was really nothing specifically special about Germans that made them more inclined to be, support fascism necessarily, or, to stand by while a Holocaust occurs.
And now we've learned that Americans are just exactly the same way. We watched a literal Holocaust unfold before our eyes, and we can actually see text messages from the victims, and we're not doing anything about it.
Yeah,
we're not rising up.
We're still pretending there's some sort of tension here, that it's unclear what the situation is. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, and I think it's really fascinating because I went to college. I went to high school in the 90s, and I had this really badass teacher who did this advanced religion class. I'm Catholic. I went to Catholic school, which is ironic because I'm not religious at all. They used to call me Satan's cowgirl in high school.
Nice.
Yeah.
Satan's cowgirl is a great name for a band.
Or a sex position. Reverse Satan's cowgirl. Work on it. I love that. And so we had this those when Schindler's List came out. And so she used that as an opportunity to do this advanced placement religion class where she found some students who might be independent thinkers. And apparently I was one of them. And we did an entire year on the Holocaust, and we read all this stuff and learned about it. And I was one of the only people in the class who was guys, that could absolutely happen in America. We are not exempt from that. People just didn't seem to have the imagination for it. I don't really understand why. So I've just been reading up on, the experience of people who lived in Germany at the time, the rise to fascism in Nazi Germany and the Third Reich, and everything I can get my hands on because I was just trying to understand. And so when I was learning about that, I learned a lot of really cool stories about spies, prostitutes, children who would all kinds of people who might not be what you would typically think of as the resistance, doing a lot of really great work. And so, when I woke up the day after the election, the first thing I thought of was, how can I use the stuff I know? This is the time to figure out how to behave now, how to treat other people now, how to stand up and how to not just because people are going to panic. People are freaking out. I was in New York on 9/11. And so I know how people might act out and freak out a little bit, but you also learn people's character in moments like that. And people will surprise you. People you think might be awesome and they might talk a good game, they might bail and they might be very cowardly, honestly. And then there might be other people who you would never expect to do something really great. And when the time comes, they might do something really great. So yeah, that's why I just thought, Carly and I connected on Blue Sky.
Well, right now we're experiencing the great migration to Blue Sky, where everyone is coming from Twitter. And Blue Sky is great because you can mute all the conservatives and the fascists, and someone says something in your comments and you can just be like mute and block.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I love it. And so I was just thinking about this, and I'd known of this podcast, but I hadn't listened to it before. And I just typed out something like, I don't remember exactly, but it was like, yeah, once upon a time, there were these pirates who, these people who supported a show, and the show wasn't renewed at the time, but they had this big community, and that's how a bunch of pirates defeated fascism or something like that,
Yeah. And then I was like, have you listened to our last episode?
Yeah. And I'm like, no, what did you guys do? And it was it was great. And all the references and things you guys are talking about were really helpful. And I recommend everybody go back and listen to that. I'm really glad you guys were on the, you guys did that a few months back. Right?
Yeah, we did it back in July when we saw things were going a certain way. I think we were really worried about France. Luckily, France turned around and came through and did what it needed to do. But
again, that historically people give France shit for Vichy France in the 30s, but they got a really bad rap. And so France might surprise you. It wouldn't surprise me because I love France, but
fire when they need to be set on fire.
Yeah, they will. They're the ones that don't fuck around with their rights and being able to have, not raising retirement age. They don't fuck around with that shit.
And a little astrology happening. Pluto has just entered Aquarius, which is the Pluto return of the French Revolution. So we're going to be experiencing French Revolution vibes in the next 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just a person I was raised Catholic in the Midwest. I was always distrustful of organized religion kind of because of that. I was always distrustful of groupthink. I've been fascinated by cults, and I've worked with some people that were in cults in the past. And I live in Tennessee. I live in the South. I have some very crazy stories that I could tell you on another day.
Let's get to pirates if possible. Do you have any interesting stories from what you know?
So when things that used to be legal are no longer legal, when you have an authoritarian government that starts to make being alive illegal for a lot of people, or just living your life the way you used to be illegal, the surprising people that might be ready to handle their shit and help their communities during times like that are people who are already criminals. So gang members, drug dealers, obviously not every criminal is, gonna just step up and be like Mr. Rogers in that moment. But some, they have certain structures and they have certain communities that are set up to be able to protect people. So there's a story about in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, and the government was extremely ludicrously, just tragically slow to respond. Gang members in New Orleans protected their communities. They not only protected them from outside looters, they had, a structure and relationships with people. They were able to get medical care to people. They were able to, there's some stories about them protecting their community by shooting people. Those stories most of the time were kind of falsified, but those were the people that were ready to be able to stand up and they had their own little infrastructure that was outside the law. And so I thought that was fascinating. Recently in East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, we had a horrible hurricane
And
areas.
the government response has not been good, from
No.
what I understand.
It's been kind of good and kind of not. There were some stories online that were not completely true, but people have been waiting for help and they've gotten help, but a lot of people weren't able to really get help from FEMA, or things are slow, and that's just kind of common, and it's not okay, but it's just the way it is. But a lot of churches and a lot of mutual aid organizations, the groups that I was already following for other reasons, mutual aid groups like Beloved Asheville and other groups like that have already been organizing to help people with harm reduction, homeless people or unhoused people, and then helping the queer community, and also helping, because after Roe v. Wade was overturned, it's illegal to have an abortion in Tennessee. It's passed this week.
One of the bigger laws.
Yeah, and even though they have some exceptions, life of the child mother, there have been a lot of concerns and a lot of stories that are really similar to what's happening in Texas. So there have been a lot of groups that have been preparing for things that used to be legal to no longer be legal. And those are the groups that I trust. They already have their own infrastructure. They're working on it. So for example, one thing that people might, especially in our fandom, might be inclined to want to help is, help families that have trans kids, because they may end up having to turn social workers on them, and turn it into like if they're getting any treatment, that could be considered child abuse. And so those to me are the people that might need the most help the fastest, the soonest. And I'm just a regular ass person, and I'm cis, and, I was a theater kid, but I'm not, and I'm in a fandom, but I don't really know. So I could go out and try to help my trans friends and do stuff, but I haven't been doing that on the ground the way these groups have. And so one of the things about Hurricane Katrina is that was kind of as far as I know, and again, I'm not a proper historian, but as far as I remember, that was like one of the main points in recent history that really brought about the resurgence or the building of national and international mutual aid groups. So if you want to help trans people in your community or in red states, you're worried about people, just go on Instagram, just Google mutual aid, do some research, call your friends who might live in those areas that might have some resources. You can give them money, you can help them out directly. Because I personally, and this is just me, think that families with trans kids might be the ones that are most in danger right away, not to mention anyone who's undocumented. And then our trans friends who are, always unsafe. So that's something that I thought was really cool about what happened, in New Orleans. Sometimes these are like illegal gang leaders,
Illegal. Non-legal. Yeah. I don't know where it is, but yeah.
So another story I love, and this goes back to World War II. There's this really badass chick from America. Her name is Virginia Hall, and she was a spy for Britain. And she had lived in France when she was in college, and she really fell in love with the area, and she fell in love with the language, and she spoke it, almost fluently. And so when the war broke out, and then when the Nazis invaded France, she volunteered for a service in the UK. This chick had one leg.
Oh, no. I think I heard of her. Yeah.
Virginia Hall. And
I think there was a My Favorite Murder podcast episode about her.
I wouldn't be surprised, because she had some accident, like a hunting accident, and accidentally shot off like her lower part of her, like below the knee. And so she had a prosthesis.
Like Izzy Hands.
She had an
Wonderful.
Izzy Hands situation. She was a unicorn, and she was incredibly badass. This woman's, you got to check it out. I mean, it's amazing. So what she did was she went to Lyon, France, and Lyon at the time was being run, Vichy government, the Nazis were there. They were imposing all that stuff on the people of France. And she was in charge of building an entire spy network by herself.
Nice.
Yeah. And so what she did was she became friends with some nuns, local nuns who knew the community, and she became friends with a madam who ran a brothel.
Nice.
And they got a gynecologist. And so this is what they did in this one little situation. There's so many other stories, but this one thing that they did was, so venereal diseases were really a big concern for all the troops at the point, and Nazi troops. They were trying to make sure that people didn't get BD, and they would have cards for prostitutes or sex workers, to use to prove that they were free of BD, and they got the gynecologist to create false documents
Nice.
So they would have sex workers who have VD.
Nice. Give all the Nazis syphilis.
They gave them
And
all
gonorrhea.
syphilis and gonorrhea, and they
Chlamydia.
they did
all of it.
They did.
Crabs.
Yeah.
Herpes.
They would sleep with
Love
as
it.
many. Yeah, they would sleep with as many like Nazi soldiers as they could in the brothel, and then they would go get their own treatment for VD. They also these sex workers would, once the guys were sleeping, they would dose them with drugs. They would take pictures of all their documents. They got them hooked on heroin.
Nice. Nice.
Nazi, like the Luftwaffe Nazi pilots, like the Air Force there, they would get them high on heroin the night before, so they couldn't fucking fly properly the next day. And that's my kind of sabotage. I love that.
I love that. Who out here is giving Donald Trump gonorrhea? I know it's a tough job. It's a hard job, but
Stormy Daniels, I consider Stormy Daniels the hero. She's incredibly brave. Not just for sleeping with him, but
Trump's entire cabinet.
Yeah,
what can we do to get them?
How do they
good
not?
old chlamydia? Good old. Let's bring syphilis back.
Make syphilis great again. Make syphilis great again.
Maybe they already have it. Maybe this is maybe what we're seeing in them is like the mental decline associated with late stage symptoms.
There you go.
That's actually really funny. Like another show that I love, Succession, ends up being pretty prophetic these days, and it's a really good watch. But yeah, they joke about some head of a network that they're working with that he has some issues and they think he has syphilis, untreated syphilis. But yeah, I mean, that's just like one example of people that are on the outside that are not considered the people that would, people that want to be a regular citizen.
You know what? What happened with monkeypox? Monkeypox was a good disease.
Yeah.
If you give monkeypox to Donald Trump, I will give you $500.
But then you'd also have to have
we can start a pool. We can start a play, get a bunch of money together. Like, listen, somebody take this hit. We've got a lot of cash for you.
So our fandom can, raise a bunch of money for a couple billboards. Let's just raise some money. Let's just there's no bad ideas in brainstorming. Let's just raise some money.
Biological warfare.
Biological warfare, exactly. No.
The Our Flag Means Death fandom waged biological warfare on Donald Trump's cabinet.
Absolutely.
I love that headline.
Yeah, I love it.
Let's make it real.
Let's make it real.
Yeah.
And just that part is a joke. I'm not advocating it personally, but it's a source of inspiration. That's just me, but it's a source of inspiration. I think that it will come a time when people are going to need to be creative and be able to stop people from hurting other people.
This is also just a great fan fiction plot.
Like Spanish Jackie's brothel.
Do we give Ricky a venereal disease?
I mean, he's on his nose, right?
I know.
Yeah, she doesn't cut his nose off. She gives him syphilis and his nose falls off.
Exactly.
I love that.
I'm just thinking like who gets the venereal disease and how, and he's like, oh no, I suddenly have this venereal disease. Maybe it's Lucius. And Steed's like, you know what we could do with this?
I think it's the Swede, actually. I think
Who's going to give it?
I think Lucius is too smart. He knows Lucius is a safe sex expert.
True.
Giving safer sex workshops.
This is true.
But the Swede clearly doesn't know.
Exactly. He's the guy who's getting scurvy. He's the guy who's getting syphilis. He's the guy who's getting gonorrhea. He's the guy. He's that guy.
Yeah.
Give him the diseases.
So then the crew is like, okay, Swede, I'm sorry that you're going through this right now, but we need you to go on a mission and then we'll cure you. But your mission right now is to track down Prince Ricky and have sex with him. Will you do this?
And then he'll be like, you know what? He actually was really nice. No, snap out of it, Swede. You had a job to do and you did it. Good job. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of my favorite little stories about resistance. And then there's also, there's a ton of really cool stories about other people who, again, weren't the ones you would think would be primed to be able to resist, but they were people who are this is a very kind of a popular story. There was a movie about it in the 90s called Swing Kids.
Yeah. What's the story of Swing Kids? I know that I haven't seen that movie, but the title rings a bell.
Yeah. So big band and jazz was really big for these kids, all across the world, but definitely in America and Europe, and I'm sure Canada at the time in the 30s. And these kids were just genuinely really into swing dancing, the Lindy Hop, jitterbug, all that kind of thing. And it was just like a normal thing they would do. But eventually, once fascism came to Germany, they were saying that swing dancing is, too sexual, but mostly too black, and too Jewish. A lot of jazz performers at the time, obviously jazz comes from a black tradition in America, and a lot of Jewish performers too. So they were trying to stop these kids from being able to do this kind of dancing and listening to this music. Their records were banned. And these kids were mostly like middle to upper middle income. They were the ones that were able to pay for black market records and stuff like that. And they would have illegal dances. And so they weren't political. These kids were not deliberate, they might have had different political beliefs, but they didn't have like a cohesive political thing. They just wanted to be able to dance and have fun. Basically, they were in a fandom.
Yeah, like we just want to be able to watch shows about gay pirates. And we just want to be able to read books about gay kids and
do
all that. But now this is being increasingly banned.
Yeah. And so when that kind of thing happened, these kids were like, fuck you guys. So let me see if I can get the detail. So basically what happened was once things started to become compulsory and things became illegal, these kids still wanted to be able to dress the way they wanted to dress and dance the way they wanted to dress. They were just essentially, opposites from what the Nazis were trying to do. So the dancing, it was considered vulgar. It was often connected to claims of sexual promiscuity. And then these kids, I'm sorry. Okay, so it just kind of went hand in hand with people that just wanted to do their own thing. They didn't want to have to follow the rules of some really restrictive society. And so they eventually became more and more anti-fascist. They were getting beat up by Nazi youth on the streets. They were getting arrested for having these illegal parties. And eventually, over a period of time, they were jailed and interrogated by the Gestapo at some point. Once the world, like 1940, 1941, things started to get a lot harder. They were, their records were confiscated. And then the Gestapo would shave their heads to shame them. So again, they weren't inherently political, but they just believed in being able to do what they wanted to do. That they did some really fun things, like they would throw these parties, and when they were making everyone do Sig Heil, they would say swing Heil.
Oh, cute.
So they used like a humor comedy. They would like change some of the posters that were like, you can't do swing dancing here, and they would change it to be like, please dance swing here, and shit like that. So they just had a lot of like, verve and attitude, and they were just like, you guys can't tell me what to do. We just want to live our teenage lives. And so eventually what happened was, once they started cracking down on these groups, Heinrich Himmler, who was the head of the SS, instructed him that all the ringleaders and teachers with enemy views who are encouraging the swing youth are to be assigned to a concentration camp. So they started using brutal measures against these kids to try to take away their spirit. Okay, so 383 kids were arrested between 1940 and 1942 in Hamburg alone. Most of them were under 21 years old. They often endured weeks in jail and brutal interrogations by the Gestapo. And then
interrogate our flag means death fans. I dare you. You know what we're going to do? We're going to be so annoying if you interrogate us. We'll be so annoying.
We'll have like Izzy's speech memorized, motherfucker.
Yeah. And also we'll cry a lot.
Yeah.
You torture us, we're going to cry. We are such babies. But we're going to be annoying when you cry.
And hopefully most of us won't be sent to concentration camps. I mean, that is something, but you can think about that and you can think, oh God, that's a really bad end. None of us want that. I'm not encouraging anything like that. I don't want that to happen. But if you think about the history of it, these kids were willing to were put in a situation where they had to stand up for their values, and they were like, fuck you guys.
And these kids are like not political. They're just like, we just want to dance.
No.
We are political, and we're like, we just want to read our fan fiction and disseminate it to the masses. So,
and again, we're a threat. This group of kids, they were all out, some of them are just normal, average, upper middle class kids, but there are a lot of Jewish kids. There are a lot of Catholics, other groups that, a fascist society is going to start pulling out and then turning into criminals. They were in danger, but they insisted on having something to believe in and a life to live. And I think that is a good inspiration for us all. We're really terrified about what might happen, but I think that we need to remember that there is so much to live for. And one of the best ways to resist fascism is to be your weird ass self.
Yeah.
And not pretend that you don't believe in what you believe or care about what you care about or love who you love or that you are who you are.
Yeah. And that's a really good segue to, I just have to say, Tessa, your ceiling in your house and your decor is gorgeous. Is this your house that you're at right now? Or
this is Dahlia's place.
Dahlia, I love the way
bed.
I love the everything. The whole aesthetic here is amazing.
Yeah. Dahlia's aesthetic is the greatest of all time.
It's a collection of special trash that has been accumulating over years.
I'm getting
so beautiful. It's
like
so
missions, sapphic /
plants.
I love that. So, and I'm talking a lot, but I got to tell you guys about a group that was kind of adjacent to the Swing Kids that I just found out about last night, and they're incredible. Let me tell you their name. They were the Edelweiss Pirates.
Yay, the Edelweiss Pirates.
They had pirates during World War II in Germany fighting and other parts of Europe fighting fascism. So this is who these kids were. They were lower class, like working class kids. And then when the Nazis started to push compulsory Hitler Youth membership, a lot of these kids, since they were working class, it wasn't a big deal for them to drop out of school when they were 14. And that was around the age when you might be forced to become Hitler Youth. And again, these were similar to the Swing Kids where they just wanted to live their lives. They weren't political, but they were forced into it. So what they did was they created a group that would go out into the woods and go camping and have fun and do all the stuff that they, do all like the hiking and all the stuff that the Hitler Youth said they liked to do, but just without all the fucking fascism of it. Basically, they created a group of kids like 14 through 17 that were there to fight the Hitler Youth. And if you're
did they actually fight the Hitler Youth?
They literally fought the Hitler Youth.
Nice.
They would go out into the forest where the Hitler Youth were doing their like stupid little, pretend, marches and shit in the woods. And this is the thing about the Hitler Youth at the time. They had laws where if anyone member of the Hitler Youth committed a violent crime, did anything like very brown shirt Nazi type shit where they would just kill someone or attack someone or rape somebody, anything like that, or just like just cause trouble, they couldn't be arrested. So they're basically a militia of teenagers that the Nazis created. So this opposite group, the Edelweiss Pirates, were basically doing to the Hitler Youth what the Hitler Youth were doing to the people of Germany. And not only that, so they would like go fight them in the woods. They would beat them up on the streets to the point where some Hitler Youth in certain neighborhoods had to hide their outfits because they were and they were
you guys
Nazis scared again.
Exactly. And you guys, this sounds so much fun going around and beating up Nazis.
I know.
We have to get off our phones. This is really hard. We have to get off our phones, off our skies. We have to start getting in shape. We have to start, we gotta just hike a little bit.
Hike just a little bit. Get out into the forest, do your own thing. They didn't just do that. They would find any opportunity to sabotage anything. Nice. They would tear down signs. They would protect Jewish neighbors. They would hide people. They would help distract people so the Nazis weren't watching. I mean, they were like a true resistance movement, and they were 14 to 17-year-old kids. And they were motherfucking pirates.
Yeah.
So that felt like a really good piece of inspiration. And it felt kind of kismet that I learned about that last night before we were recording today.
Yeah.
We really can be pirates.
We can be real life pirates.
We can. And
we can sabotage stuff. We can
sabotage. We can save people. We can protect them. We can be creative.
We can even just make really cool stickers and put them around every single intersection in your city.
Yeah. We could do something, post them up, be annoying, be ourselves, live the lives we want. Because again, these kids weren't political. They just wanted to live their lives. But they were like, you're not going to fucking tell me to be in this fascist regime. We don't want to do that. And so we're going to fight you. And I'm not encouraging anyone to fight anyone, not just because I'm protecting myself and I don't want to be known as someone who's like fighting anyone. But, I do think it's important to not do that too soon, too early, unless it's really warranted. Hopefully we won't need it. But
it's always okay to punch a Nazi in the face.
It's always okay to punch a Nazi.
Yeah.
I think one of the key things is just we have to get comfortable breaking the law. And I think like if that's not something you're used to, that's hard. to start with. And so I think start with like just some little acts of civil disobedience, you know?
Putting up stickers. Yeah, putting up stickers is a misdemeanor, but it's a nice little practice.
Yeah, exactly. And start from there and work your way up. It's just like lifting weights. You start with something small and then you get to something big.
Yeah. And again, these kids weren't out there. They weren't bloodthirsty. They weren't trying to do that stuff. They only did it because nobody else would. Everyone else were acting like cowards. And these kids were like, we're not going to put up with that. But because those people were terrorizing people. It was one of the most restrictive regimes in the history of humanity. Mm-hmm. And they just weren't going to put up with it. And so, again, I think that people need to be loud, be annoying, speak up while you still can. And civil disobedience.
Yeah, I think
Tessa, and again, humor and creativity.
Yeah, Tessa and Dahlia have really good stories. Do you guys want to share your stories?
Do you want to the story about breaking the law?
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't say I was fighting a fascist regime per se. This is more of a fun criminality story.
Yeah,
also worthwhile.
Yeah. So my friend was living in a building in the Mile End, which is a really gentrified neighborhood that no one can afford anymore in Montreal. And the building next to hers was inhabited by people who had been there for a long time, and together were making a deal with the owner to buy the building from him and create a co-op.
Nice.
The deal was underway and the owner died. And the building went to his heirs, who give a fuck about what was planned and decided that they would renovate it and try and sell it for much more, and kicked everybody out. So just not that I have much empathy for landlords to begin with, but in case you might have. Now, you can see why I did what I did. So my friend mentioned, because that she shares a courtyard with this building, she mentioned one of the back doors was still open to one of the apartments. So I went in at night. So I'm someone who loves to repurpose things. Almost everything in my home is something I found that was broken that I fixed or whatever. I like to reuse things. So I'm just like, what's still there? Maybe there's something worth taking. So I went in at night with a headlamp and some tools, and I took all the shelving, the nice light fixtures, and one of the most beautiful things, one of the apartments was this really nice, I'm so tired, was it bronze? Yeah. It was like a bronze fireplace, like a vintage bronze fireplace. Ooh. And I removed it from the wall and carried it out through the yard and put it in the back of a car that I was borrowing. I basically ransacked the place and filled with holes so that the people who had bought the building could not enjoy the fireplace, because I didn't think they deserved it.
Yeah, beautiful. Landlords are the worst.
A lot of like leaders and the media are going to say they like to equate vandalism and violence. That's not the same thing at all.
Exactly.
Vandalism is destroying property. Violence is just hurting a person.
Yeah.
Or an animal or what, So if you can just remember, there is a clear distinction in that, and stand up for people who might be destroying property as a mode of legitimate protest.
And it's important to remember the laws are created by rich people for rich people. So a rich person, a corporation, can vandalize the hillside, can vandalize the trees, can vandalize the river,
can take away somebody's housing that they've been in for like 20 or 30 years and just be fuck you, you're out.
And that's profound violence.
And it's not illegal.
Yeah.
But if you as a person, put up a poster on a building telling the truth about that situation, you are breaking the law with vandalism.
And again, another example of something going on in Tennessee is they recently passed a law, maybe like a year ago, outlawing camping in public spaces. So
which is another of these sort of like anti-homeless sort of garbage laws, basically.
Yeah, and then the Supreme Court recently
violence against homeless people.
Absolutely, and the Supreme Court upheld that. So
of course they did.
Of course they did. They've been fucking stacked.
Yeah, so homelessness essentially is, for the most part, illegal in the U.S. Now, locally in Knoxville, there have been raids on, homeless encampments in town. We have some really big homeless encampments in town under bridges and stuff. And there have been raids and they've been awful. And our Knoxville mayor, who is a quote unquote Democrat, she's a quote unquote liberal. One of the first things she did was celebrate the local police being able to buy a tank
Oh, geez. Why
And
do the police need a tank?
They paraded the tank through town. And this is a liberal, a quote unquote,
Does Tennessee police think that they're going to use a tank against?
Yeah. And also, Godzilla. I mean, really, Godzilla is the danger. And be Godzilla. Okay. Be the Godzilla you want to see in the world.
Hillbilly Godzilla.
Yeah. I love that.
Godzilla with a banjo.
Oh, yeah. I can have a banjo right over there. I can hook you up. But yeah, that's the thing. It's been upsetting and it's been hard and people have been protesting it, but it was kind of like a little bit stable, but it was just really awful. But now it's like, we don't know for sure if the cops are, they might, it just depends on the local cops if they want to enforce those laws or not. Maybe there's some decent dudes that won't, but I don't have a lot of faith in that, at least with the upcoming administration and all of the kind of people feeling empowered to do just awful shit. Okay. So yeah, that's one of those things where real people are being hurt. And I think it's amoral to not do what you can to help them. Then now here's a sort of a nonviolent resistance thing that happened in American history really quick. And it's my last story. So in New York City during the Revolutionary War, British soldiers were marching up. They're like going across the East River into Manhattan. General Howe, the guy that ran the British military at the time, he was staying at this woman's house. Her name's Mary Murray. They had this property in Murray Hill now. That's a neighborhood in New York now named after her. She was a patriot. Like she was someone who was for the Americans. Her husband was a loyalist to the crown. So they're staying at their house. And, she's just a wife, just cool, whatever. She wasn't getting in anyone's way. But while General Howe was waiting for his troops to come up, the not the Union, but the Patriot soldiers, that were defending America were also coming up. They would have accidentally run into the British soldiers and gotten to like a really big fight, and they would have absolutely lost it. But Mary Murray noticed this was happening, so she delayed these troops. She kept their generals and General Howe and the other major officers and soldiers at her house having a very long lunch. And she fed them tons of food and tea, and the conversation was flowing and the wine was flowing. And all the while, her servants and family members who weren't loyal to the crown were watching out their window to make sure that the Patriot soldiers were able to pass by so they didn't run into the loyalist soldiers. So if you're somebody who's not, doesn't feel like you could go out into the streets and protest or do any acts of civil disobedience,
you can slow walk shit.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Absolutely. A lot of people in fascist governments will slow walk the fuck out of stuff because they're stuck in a government job, and maybe they're one of the only ones who weren't fired from the government job, but they're not, on board with that stuff. So they'll just slow walk their job.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be
take 14 days to respond to that email.
Exactly. And so you can, all kinds of people are required and all kinds of abilities are required. You don't have to be overtly bold, and you don't have to put yourself in a certain kind of danger if you're not able to do that. But you can very politely delay fascists or delay the bad guy from hurting people in your communities.
Oh, no.
So I just think that was a really cool story. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I lost the paperwork. Oh, no.
Whoops. Oh, no. This is going to take a couple more weeks. Come back later.
Yeah. And you can use that as a way to support people who are able to take more direct action as well.
Exactly.
And as a way to back people up when they are taking sort of that more overt and more challenging stance.
Yeah. And I bet a lot of people didn't know Mary Murray was not a loyalist to the crown. I bet they didn't even know that about her. She probably didn't tell people.
Well, she was somebody's wife, and so they weren't asking her. They just assumed her husband's opinions were hers.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't they? She was just a dutiful wife who, again, thought for herself and knew what was right and what she believed in. And she did an incredible thing. Like literally, we wouldn't have won the Revolutionary War quite possibly without that one act. I'm not joking. It was at the very beginning, and America did not have a lot of troops. And George Washington was like trying to get people uptown. It was going to be really hard. We almost lost that war a million times. It was a really tough one to win. So you never know what you can do by just doing a little bit of slow walking or civil disobedience or just inspiring people, like the fucking Onion, you guys.
Humor
Yeah.
like does a hell of a lot of work for us.
does.
Because fascists aren't funny is the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not funny
Intentionally.
They don't mean to be.
Yeah. They are intentionally funny.
They're very funny.
accidentally
They're
funny.
ridiculous. Yeah. I think Sebastian Gorka is hilarious, but he's probably the biggest Nazi of them all in that group. Yeah, they don't have a sense of humor about themselves.
Yeah.
And if you like, the Onion was, bought InfoWars from Alex Jones, and that was like something that I felt like I really needed at the time it happened. It reminded me of like, that's the kind of Americans that I grew up with, that I know that we are and can be. And a lot of people are feeling really betrayed by their fellow Americans after the election. But the Onion did the right thing. And even if they, don't fully win it, although I think they will, they gave people hope. And they mocked the people who deserve mockery more than anybody.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Tessa, do you have any thoughts on sabotage? Any sabotage stories from history? Sabotage stories from your life?
Oh man,
sabotage.
Man, several. There's a Canadian story that is kind of a parallel to the Mary Murray story, except it's a loyalist woman who overheard an American general planning an ambush. Dolores Secord, working as like a fucking nurse or something. But basically, she ended up overhearing American plans for an invasion coming up into Canada during one of our little
War of 1812.
Yeah, exactly.
I Googled it. I just Googled it.
Yeah, exactly. And she ended up walking basically a very long way across some extremely difficult terrain with, no food, no water, nothing. Just walked until she encountered a group of Mohawk who were allied with the Canadian troops, and ended up giving the warning to Fitzgibbon, who was the general. Then I'm just reciting a Canadian Heritage Minute right now, which is
it's great.
Yes, if you're interested, check out the Heritage Minutes. The Halifax explosion one always makes me cry. But yeah, so similarly, we have opportunities where you might find yourself in a place where you have overheard something because of where you're working, because of sort of like what's happening in your community. There are always going to be opportunities to use that information, to share that information in ways that can support resistance. So, you don't have to be the most active person in the movement, so long as you're engaged, so long as you're sort of keeping track of who needs information. And if something falls into your lap, man, pass it along. We have more opportunities now than ever to sort of like share that kind of information with people who are going to be able to do something with it, with somebody who's going to be able to like take a headlamp and go in and get all the shit from these assholes who are kicking people out, and who are going to be able to go in and take these kinds of actions, because like that is, that's just like a fun little action, but it's also an action that gets you used to a kind of activity that in the context of this growing fascist threat could well become a revolutionary activity and could well become an activity to protect community. Because if you get yourself used to doing that kind of thing, then when it really fucking counts, and when it's to protect people and to save people from these fuckers, you'll already have that level of comfort with going in and doing something that's a little scary.
And here's a super easy illegal action that you can do that you probably won't get caught. Around shopping centers, there's these little black boxes. They're little, about this big, and they have a hole in the side, and they're black and flat. And you can find them kind of by dumpsters sometimes. Those are little things of rat poison. And the rats go in there and eat the poison and die. And then the rats get eaten by birds of prey, by coyotes, by bobcats. You can just pick up those little black things and throw them in the dumpster. And it's illegal, but you're helping to save the local coyotes and bobcats from being poisoned by eating a rat that got poisoned.
I love that. I didn't.
No, that's great. Crazy. That's great.
Like this is gonna sound like self-aggrandizing, but I've been telling the story lately about, on 9/11, I was working in this high rise. I was just like a temp secretary, and I was working for, some boss I barely knew, because, you just work at different jobs all the time. And this particular boss, none of us knew what was really going on We weren't watching it on the news. We were watching it out our window.
Oh, scary.
And we didn't know what was going on. I had worked in the World Trade Center maybe a week before. I didn't realize how bad it might be until I started counting the floors. And I realized, oh God, that's like 20 floors. So my boss, once she realized that there's, that we were under attack, where our island was under attack, we didn't know that we weren't going to keep getting bombed by planes. So people didn't know what to do. What she did was she asked me to call her a cab so she could get off the island. She didn't ask how any of us were, but okay, whatever, because people do panic a little bit in times like this. So I was just, okay, I'll call you a cab. And then she was like, wait a minute, call me in a second cab in case the first cab doesn't show up. And that's one of those moments where it's like you see a person's character.
Yeah.
In that moment, I was willing to give her grace that she's freaking out. But now I'm like, oh, I know you. I know who you are, and I will always know who you are. Mm-hmm. You're a person that is only looking out for yourself.
Yeah.
You're already putting like a driver's life in potential danger. And then just in case that driver doesn't show up, you want me to call another cab, backup cab, another driver who also needs to get the fuck off the island.
And who will show up.
You a fucking lift. Jesus
Christ. And will show up and you won't be there. And they will have possibly missed precious moments. Like we didn't know that we weren't going to keep getting bombed. We really didn't for hours, Yeah. And so I called her one cab and I didn't fucking call her a second cab. Fuck her,
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, and I didn't say anything. I was just like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. But fuck her. I'll get her one cab. Fine. Oh, and by the way, I'm okay. Thanks for the offer. I'm just going to, walk across the Queensboro Bridge to get into Astoria. Cool. Peace. So I've been thinking a lot about 9/11 because this kind of feels like that. It feels like something massive and something traumatic for the world. And it's scary and people will act crazy. They will get weird. We've seen it. I will act crazy and weird. We're all going to make kind of fools out of ourselves, but the people who actually have decent character will show themselves.
So today on Blue Sky, Timothy Snyder posted like a super abbreviated version of his On Tyranny, little lessons from On Tyranny. And so I'll just give a brief rundown since they're here. Do not obey in advance, which I think has been going around quite a bit. Defend institutions. Beware the one-party state. Take responsibility for the face of the world. Remember professional ethics. Be wary of paramilitaries. Be reflective if you must be armed. Arm the gaze. I love arm the gaze.
Yeah.
But we're obviously be reflective.
Arm the gaze with their unicorn Nerf guns.
But arm the gaze.
At the very least. Yeah.
I just would love if the NRA just became a gay organization. Every single gay person joined the NRA. And then...
Well, that's like what
everybody take a martial arts class.
Yeah, there you go.
Just go and take a martial arts class. Doesn't matter which one. Just find like a good one that isn't like some shitty masculinist bullshit if you can find it. And yeah, just get comfortable with.
Yeah. And also, by the way, if you're not used to guns, do not just go out and buy a gun. Get properly trained for gun safety. Obviously, we don't want to just throw out our own personal judgment. We all want proper gun safety. And also, if you have mental health issues, I would personally say don't get a handgun, maybe get a rifle. It's harder to shoot yourself in the head with it because, a lot of stuff's going to happen. And if you really feel like you need to have a gun to protect yourself, just make sure that you're properly trained. And that's also, another way, like if you happen to have a lot of Trump friends or Trump people in your life, or you live in an area where there's a lot of Trump voters and you don't want to talk politics with them, get them to teach you how to use a weapon. They don't need to know.
Yeah.
They could take you to a shooting range. Like, take advantage of your resources around you. Again, I don't want to advocate for people to be with anyone that they don't feel safe around emotionally or whatever, or physically. But like, if you have some, an uncle in your life who's generally cool, but they just voted for a fascist and it's really hard, but otherwise they're okay, and they happen to know how to use weapons and shit, just be like, hey man, let's teach me how to do this stuff. Get me licensed. Take advantage of the resources you have around you.
I like stand out. Someone has to. It's easy to follow along, but it can feel strange to do or say something different. Without that unease, there is no freedom. Remember Rosa Parks, the moment you set an example, the spell of the status quo is broken and others will follow. Be kind to our language. Avoid pronouncing the phrases everyone else does. think up your own way of speaking, even if only to convey that thing you think everyone else is saying. Make an effort to separate yourself from the internet, read books, and believe in truth. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding lights.
Yeah, yeah. There have been, especially because I live in a red area, but I think there's a lot of us that do know a lot of people who voted for Trump. And those people have complex reasons. Some of them are very generic. Some of them might be undereducated. Some of them might be cruel people. Others might not really necessarily be cruel in their daily lives, but they, voted for incredibly cruel policies. And I don't want to encourage anyone to, force themselves to go to Thanksgiving with their family if they don't feel safe around them or anything like that. But I do think a really big thing to remember, what really is going on right now is that there are billionaires who want power and who are gaining power, power-hungry, billionaire, oligarch type people. They've been using classic wedge issues like racism, immigration, fears of the immigrant, fears of the other to separate us. And it's deliberate, and it's a classic thing that people have done over centuries.
Their agenda is basically to funnel any wealth from us to them. That's all that's happening here.
Yeah, it is. It's a sleight of hand, and they are trying to separate us. And I think that, when I deal with people in my life that might have voted for Trump, or, neighbors or whoever, old friends, and I'm baffled by it, and I'm upset, and I feel betrayed. I just have to remember that they're not my enemy right now.
Yeah, a lot of them have been brainwashed. I mean, they have to take responsibility, but there is
the power-hungry billionaires are my enemy. The power-hungry billionaires are trying to take all of our money and all of our rights, and they're using political strongmen to do it. And this is a classic thing that they've done throughout time. And this is what fascism is. So that's helped me a little bit to remember, and also just to be able to live among, people who might have voted for Trump. Once I started to really get that in my head and remember that that's really what's going on, I'm not necessarily looking at my next door neighbor like he's a Nazi.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep.
And I think that's useful.
Yeah. Let's wrap things up with quick tips for people. And then we'll see if there's any fic recs that address some of the things that we have talked about today. So my tips are, if a cop tries to talk to you about anything, do not say a word to a cop. If they persist, or if a cop asks you questions, you can respond with, "Am I being detained?" And that is really the only thing you should ever say to a cop. If someone is doing something illegal, morally justifiable, but illegal with you, and that person keeps on trying to get you to say out loud what you are doing, that person is an undercover cop and they were recording you. Do not say out loud what illegal activity that you are engaged in. Molly, what is your addition?
Yeah, I was just going to add, your phone is a cop. The internet is a cop. Do some research on how to protect your digital life and communications. And Timothy Snyder says this, and a lot of other people say this too. Don't let, even people that you generally agree with, don't let them pressure you into just following their lines and their ideas. You think for yourself, because you're going to need to be able to trust yourself.
Even activist groups can be, what's the word? Fascist in their own way. They can be culty. They can be, there's usually a leader. Resist groupthink and just be someone who does think for yourself and stands and just is like, just be who you are, know who you are, stand up for what's right. Protect people that need protection. You don't need to waste time convincing other people to get on your side or to change their ideas. The worst has already happened. Trump is already, going to be president again. That's already done. So just have your own integrity. Don't be afraid to stand out and be weird and be into the things you're into, and get together with the people who love the stuff that you love, and be annoying, be fun, live your life, make art, and then protect the people around you that need the help. Just like give yourself a minute, give yourself a break. If you need to dip out and dip back in, it's okay, because other people are all in their own little schedules for that too. Just take care of yourself, and then when you can, take care of others. And Tessa, what is any tips for?
I mean, like I said earlier, practice little acts of civil disobedience, do little illegal things so that you get comfortable with them, throw out the black boxes, do a little shoplifting, some vandalism here and there, just little things so you feel comfortable with it. Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you, but watch the movie Amelie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with that movie, but that's a really cool little French movie where she kind of sort of sabotaged people that were being rude and shitty, and just like teeny tiny like little acts just to make their lives a little bit harder. That for me was like an inspiration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And build ties within your community as much as you can, because we're going to have to rely on each other. Be a person who supports others, but also be a person who accepts support and reaches out to you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Do we have any fic recs on our brains that make us think of any of the things that we've talked about today?
Like, I have fic recs that are related to crime. I couldn't find one of them, but I found one that a friend recommended, thinking it might be this one, but it isn't. But I will recommend it anyway.
Yay!
Big A dude.
It's called Had We Lived. It's by Nasiri, and so it's a steady hands fic, and there's just some general illegal activity in it, which I always enjoy.
Beautiful.
And I guess my favorite fic that and I'm new to fics, like I've only read fics for like the past year because I got so freaking obsessed. But my favorite fic is Not Pickles by Smallest Church.
Oh, yeah.
It's really funny. It's really relatable. But I think the way that can be useful is, Ed, the Ed that was written in that fic was like, had been doing therapy, had started to take time out for himself, kept asking himself what makes Ed happy. And I think, and it also had some really good tips for therapy and some tools. And so if you are inclined to read it, you should read it or reread it, because just keep reminding yourself what makes you happy, because that helps you remember what makes you you. And we need to hold on to that.
Yes. Beautiful. What are you both working on? What are you looking forward to?
I am on medical leave.
Yay.
I don't know why I don't know if I should be yaying that, but leave is good.
I do badly need the leave.
I need to leave too, man.
And I think I'm looking forward to, I'm doing some of the things that I've been looking forward to right now, but I'm also looking forward to going to Comic-Con in a couple of weeks. Yay. And I have a very, very stupid costume that I'm building. I just picked up some ass pads today.
What?
I'm making a very stupid so I'm also
ass tonight pads.
I'm also making a Star Trek. So I'm also a Star Trek nerd, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine is my favorite. So I am doing an unholy mashup in which I'm going to be Kim Kardashian. So I'm building some facial prosthetics with foam latex, and I picked up some ass pads and a wig for it today. Yeah, it's going to be.
That's so funny.
Fucking stupid.
I love that. I love that. The Wrath of Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, so fucking funny.
Love that. That is so. Oh God. Okay. I gotta make sure I'm following you. I probably do. I've everything just got changed a lot in Blue Sky, so I don't know who I'm following anymore. But I need to follow you.
I need to create a new Blue Sky, because the first one that I created, for some reason, it will not let me enter my birth date, and so it is treating me like I am a small child.
Oh,
and,
no.
I have contacted them like a couple of weeks after I contacted them. I got like an email that was like literally boilerplate garbage, sort of like, have you tried turning it off and on again? And I've tried it. I've tried it on mobile. I've tried it on my fucking computer. I've tried emptying the cat. And so I'm just like, I need to create a new account. So I'll let you know.
You're delightful. I'm very happy to meet you. And
you, Carly.
I don't know if you guys noticed, I talk a lot.
God. Same.
And obviously I'm very interested in history, and I'm very concerned about these times. So my friend Patrick, who's an historian on American history, who lives in North Carolina, he and I are going to start our own podcast.
Yay!
Called Unfreak Me Out. Basically, it's just like two buddies, one who kind of knows a little history, the other is like a very, a very calm dad voice who really is an expert on a lot of American history, can give some context about what's going on in the world right now. He's like, I'm not going to tell you to not totally freak out, but hopefully, we can, kind of like we're doing today, talk about examples from history that can give you context, give you information, maybe inspire you. Because I just think there's probably a lot of people like me who's like, I need to talk to somebody I trust who has some context and would be able to, be someone who can calmly walk us out of danger metaphorically, and hopefully learn something, and hopefully it'll be funny and fun. So we're going to be recording that next week, and I will be sharing that with the fandom and everybody else I know.
Yay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Great to hear. And let me know if you need any podcast tips or help with editing and stuff like that and getting it out on the platforms.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And I'm looking forward to seeing Reese Darby on December. What is that? I think it's December 6th. Yes, at the Largo. So I will report on Gay Pirate News Hour how that went. And I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Is that a Reese Darby and Friends show at Largo?
Yes.
I mean, those are legendary. What can you say?
It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Fantastic.
And so that is it for the Our Flag Means Fanfiction podcast. As always, do creations, be cringe, commit crime. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.